I never thought the last words my father would ever say to me were a lie. 3 days after the funeral, his lawyer sat me down in a midtown Manhattan office that smelled of leather and old money and slid a single piece of paper across the desk. The new will, signed 2 weeks before Dad's heart attack, left everything to my older sister Victoria. The company he'd built from nothing, the Hamptons estate, the offshore accounts, the art collection, all of it. I got a sealed envelope and a vague mention of sentimental items. Victoria sat beside me in a black Chanel suit, eyes already dry, and placed her manicured hand on my shoulder like a condolence. "He wanted me to take care of you, Liv," she whispered, loud enough for the lawyer to hear. "You've always been the sensitive one." The lawyer nodded, embarrassed for me. I stared at the signature, Dad's looping scrawl, and felt the floor drop out from under my life. $280 million. Gone. My birthright, my future, my proof that he'd loved me even a little, erased with a pen stroke. I walked out of that office into a freezing January rain on Park Avenue and threw up in a trash can while Victoria's driver held an umbrella over her, not me. That night, alone in my cramped Brooklyn apartment, I found the envelope he'd left me. Inside was a single USB drive and a post-it in his shaky handwriting. "If anything happens to me, play this for Olivia only." My hands shook so hard I could barely plug it in. What I heard next shattered what was left of my heart, and armed me with something far more dangerous than money. Victoria's voice, cold and businesslike, coaching our dying father while he was sedated. "Just sign, Daddy, it's what's best. Olivia will only waste it. Sign, and I'll make sure you're comfortable." The click of a pen, his groggy murmur of agreement. Then her laughing, actually laughing, as the recorder kept running. She drugged him, forged his final wishes, stolen everything while I was holding his hand in the ICU, begging him to fight. I played it again and again until the sky over the East River turned the color of dried blood. And that was the moment I knew, the real revenge begins now. My name is Olivia Harlow, 35 years old, born and raised in the shadow of Manhattan's glass towers. And for the last 6 months I have lived with a constant metallic taste in my mouth, rage, grief, and something colder. People who meet me now say I look haunted, that my cheekbones are too sharp, that my gray eyes carry winter in them year-round. They're not wrong. I used to be the autistic sister, the one who studied photography at ResD, while Victoria conquered Harvard Business, and then Dad's boardroom. I was the one who brought him soup when he worked late, who listened to his stories about coming up from nothing in Queens. Victoria was always somewhere else, London, Singapore, Davos, closing deals, collecting powerful friends like handbags. Dad adored her efficiency, feared her ambition, and, I thought, loved me in the quiet way reserved for the child who never asked for anything. Turns out he loved me exactly the way Victoria told him to on that recording. Not at all. After the will reading, Victoria wasted no time. Within weeks the locks on the Fifth Avenue penthouse were changed, my name was scrubbed from the family foundation, and an email went out to every ye of Harlow Global announcing that Victoria Harlow was now sole CEO, per our beloved founder's final wishes. I received a certified letter offering me a $500,000 goodwill payment if I agreed never to contest the will. I framed it. Then I started planning. The USB drive never left my body. I slept with it in a locket around my neck, showered with it sealed in a plastic, made encrypted backups on servers in 3 different countries. That single 47-second audio file was the only thing standing between Victoria's perfect empire and total collapse. But dropping it raw would be too easy, too merciful. She would lawyer up, claim deepfake, pay off experts, cry on morning shows about grief making my poor sister unstable. No, I wanted her to feel what I felt. The slow, corrosive certainty that everything she touched was about to turn to ash, and that she had built the fire herself. So I moved back into the city like a ghost. I sublet a loft in Dumbo with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked straight at the Harlow Global headquarters across the river, an obsidian tower with my family name in brushed steel across the top. Every night its lights mocked me. I took contract photography gigs just prestigious enough to keep me in certain rooms, charity galas, where Victoria glad-handed senators, private equity dinners in Tribeca rooftops, Art Basel parties in Miami, where she collected artists the way she once collected companies. I became very good at standing in corners with a camera, unnoticed, while conversations floated past me like smoke. And I listened. Victoria had not simply inherited money. She had inherited Dad's enemies too. There were whispers, quiet, careful ones, about creative accounting at Harlow Global, about shell companies in the Caymans, about a federal investigation that had been quietly circling for 18 months. Dad had kept it at bay with charm and political donations. Victoria kept it at bay with threats and money. But threats only work until someone has nothing left to lose. I started small. An anonymous email to a Wall Street Journal reporter containing a single scanned page from an offshore account, showing 28 million moved the day Dad died. Just enough to make Victoria sweat, not enough to trace. Then a forged text message from a burner phone to her CFO suggesting the feds had a cooperator. I watched her in boardroom windows across the river as she paced, phone glued to her ear, composure cracking like thin ice. She began canceling appearances, double, checking every room for bugs, drinking more at night. Good. Fear is a slow poison. But the real weapon was still the recording, and I needed the perfect moment to use it. That moment arrived on a sleeting April evening, at the annual Harlow Foundation Gala, held in the Grand Ballroom of the Plaza Hotel. Crystal chandeliers, black tie. 400 of New York's most powerful people pretending to care about children's literacy, while angling for board seats and tax write-offs. Victoria had turned it into her coronation. She wore emerald silk that cost more than most people's rent for a year, hair swept up like a queen, smiling that razor blade smile that made men want to give her things and women want to be her, until they realized the price. I was there as the official photographer, hired, ironically, by her own PR team who no longer recognized the quiet sister in the black pantsuit with the sharp cheekbones and dead eyes. I moved through the crowd like a shadow, capturing Victoria shaking hands with the mayor, Victoria toasting the new pediatric wing named after our father, Victoria accepting a humanitarian award, while the string quartet sawed away at Vivaldi. My camera remote was synced to a tiny recorder in my clutch. Every word she spoke into microphones that night was being saved. At 1:17 p.m., she took the podium for her speech. She thanked the room for their generosity, eyes shining with practiced tears. My father always said family is the only legacy that matters. She lied beautifully. And tonight, with my sister Olivia here, the spotlight swung to me. I lifted a hand in a perfect imitation of humility. I know he's watching and smiling down. The applause was thunderous. I waited until it began to fade, then pressed a button on the remote in my pocket. Every screen in the ballroom, 6 massive LD walls that had been cycling through heartwarming photos of smiling kids, went black. A hush fell. Then a voice filled the room, tinny and unmistakable. Victoria's voice, younger, colder, from the hospital room recording, just sign, Daddy. It's what's best. Olivia will only waste it. The click of the pen, Dad's drugged murmur. And finally her soft, satisfied laugh, gasps rippled outward like circles in a pond. Phones came out. Victoria's face on the podium went the color of old paper. She lunged for the AV booth but security, my security, hired quietly weeks earlier, blocked her. The recording looped, each repetition carving deeper. I stepped forward into the light, remote in one hand, the original USB raised in the other like a crucifix. You forged his will, Tori, I said, voice steady, amplified now by the same system that had crowned her minutes earlier. You drugged our dying father and stole everything, and you did it on tape. The room was chaos, screams, camera flashes, billionaires backing away as if betrayal were contagious. Victoria's eyes met mine across the ballroom, and for the first time in my life I saw terror in them. Real terror, the kind that strips away every layer of expensive armor. She tried to speak, but her microphone had been cut. All she could do was watch as federal agents I'd tipped months ago moved through the crowd with warrants. I didn't stay for the arrest. I walked out into the spring sleet on Central Park South, collar turned up, and hailed a cab like any other New Yorker. By morning the video was everywhere, morning shows, TikTok, every feed on Earth. Harlow Global stock cratered. Victoria was indicted on 12 counts before lunch, and the courts, faced with Dad's real will, restored every penny to me. But money was never the point anymore. Sometimes late at night I still hear that 47-second recording in my dreams. Her laugh, his groggy voice. My own heartbeat the night I first played it. Revenge, I learned, isn't sweet, it's surgical. It leaves you hollowed out and clean, like a house after a fire. But hollow is better than haunted. Victoria is in federal prison now. awaiting trial in an orange jumpsuit that will never quite fit her shoulders. I sold the company, donated half the proceeds to actual children's literacy programs, and moved to a quiet town upstate where nobody knows my last name. I still take photographs. Mostly landscapes now, empty horizons, places where no one can hide. And every April, on the anniversary of the gala, I get a letter forwarded from MDC Brooklyn. Same neat handwriting, same Montblanc pen. She begs. She threatens. She tries to bargain. I never answer. There's nothing left to say. The recording is gone, wiped, magnetized, pulverized, scattered in the Hudson. Some weapons are too dangerous to keep even for the winner. But sometimes, when the wind moves through the bare trees outside my window, and the house creaks like an old man's bones, I swear I can still hear it.